what we are doing today, we're actually going to set up this 125 gallon tank. And the reason we're setting it up is in this room we have Neocaridina shrimp, and there's tons and tons of babies. And really we don't really have any good place to put them other than just leaving them in the tank, but we're transitioning some of the tanks. Some of the tanks are being different types of shrimp. And so with this, we need to set up a Neocaridina baby tank. So this would be a good video for anyone looking to set up a Neocaridina tank. We're gonna go from start to finish on what you need to do to completely get this tank set up and all the steps in the middle and what you need to do afterwards. We'll talk about all of it, but we're setting this guy up. We have matin filters up here, so we're gonna use a matin filter in the tank, and we'll explain it step by step what you need to do, but that's what we're talking about today. What is going on, shrimp keepers? Rob with flipaquatics.com, and today we are talking about the 125 gallon tank. I know that these were both supposed to be member only tanks, but we had a little hiccup. We actually got a new tank for members only tanks, and we're using this bottom one for baby Neocaridina shrimp. So this whole video is going to be dedicated to setting up a Neocaridina shrimp tank for breeding. Now we're not going to technically do any breeding in this tank, but the principles all remain the same. So you guys sit back, enjoy the video, and hopefully be able to learn something today. Now this tank has actually been out of commission for probably about 3 or 4 months. And so with that, we really don't know what kind of bacteria was in here before, if it's still alive. We still got some, it looks like sand. We still got some sand down in the bottom. And so this tank is, needless to say, it's dirty. So most of you getting in this probably will use either a used tank or you'll go and do the $1 per gallon sale, but we got to sanitize this tank. So I want to show you how we sanitize and clean tanks to prepare them for new shrimp. So the first thing we're going to do, we're actually going to fill this up with normal tap water. Nothing special about this water. We're just going to fill it up. And the reason we're going to fill it up is just to make it easier to scrape down all the sides, make sure we get all the gunk off the side. If we're in a hurry, we just spray the sides off. We'd sanitize them, spray them off again, and then suck out the bottom. But since we got some more time, we're actually going to fill this tank completely up to the top, and then I'll show you why we're going to do that and how it makes our job a lot easier. So one of the absolute best bacteria killers is just distilled white vinegar. You can get this from, I don't know, pretty much anywhere. We get it from Menards a lot. I'm sure Sam's Club sells at Walmart, all those places. And so what we'll do is we're actually going to use this little cup. This is 8 ounces, I believe. We're going to fill this up and we're going to add it to this tank. And then we're going to let it soak for probably about, I don't know, an hour or something like that. That way it kills all the bacteria. And this is actually what we use to sanitize all of our nets. As you can see, over here we have 2 sinks. And on the left side we use this vinegar mixed with water. And we put all of our nets in there, we let them soak. And so that way no bacteria is transferred. And it works pretty good. We've been doing it this way for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. And we haven't had any problems with transfer of bacteria or anything like that. So let me see if I can do this carefully. There you go. So feel free to divide it out. You can definitely use more if you want. The only reason I'm not going to use more is because then it'll smell like just straight vinegar. And so, yeah, so for a 10-gallon tank, I would honestly probably just like do a little bloop. But I mean, 8 ounces for 125 gallons. Feel free to divide that out, and that will actually kill all the bacteria in this tank. So we're going to fill the tank all the way to the top. That way the vinegar water is touching every surface in here. We'll probably splash it up on the tops of these just to ensure that they're clean, and then let it sit for about an hour, and then we'll go from there. We got Cryptic Riffs with us. We actually have Amanda with us too. But we're using this new flipper. We actually just got these in the other day. We're going to test it out. Flipper was generous enough to send us a couple samples, and then we're also getting ready to list them on the website.
Got your instructions.
Got your instructions. Now one thing I like is this actually comes with an acrylic adapter too, and it comes with the glass one on it. And so it's a little bit of both, so that if you have an acrylic tank or a glass tank, it doesn't matter, you can buy the same one. So kind of cool, but we're going to use this to actually go through and clean this whole thing out. Normally we'd probably just use what, like a razor blade or
a regular like razor blade scraper or something like that.
Yeah.
Acrylic blade, you know, whatever it may be.
But this will probably make your job a lot easier, right?
Hopefully. If it does, I'm hoping, you know.
Hoping I get one for every tank?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. In a perfect world.
Yeah, so this is still filling up. This has been like 15 minutes, so this thing's gonna take forever to fill up. The Mike's literally just gonna go through Dude, do you know how these work? So right now you're using the pad side?
Yeah.
And if you flip it over, no, you don't even have to do it. I think if you just, actually, I've never done this before. I think, hold on.
Oh, now it's the razor blade.
Now it's the razor blade side.
Oh, see that?
I don't know how I did it though. It's complicated, isn't it?
A little bit.
Maybe it says in the instructions.
Does it say in the instructions? Usually I just toss those aside.
Yeah, it does say.
Just rotate it.
That's funny. Mike, we should have read the instructions.
You have it on this picture.
But just rotate it. So yeah, so this is gonna be good. So we'll get this all cleaned up and then we'll check back in a little bit. So we just got this matin filter drilled. We're gonna use a monster matin filter in this 125 gallon. So for all those of you that don't know what matin filters are, it's literally, we're gonna have a piece of PVC come up 90 degree, go through there, and we're gonna put air in the back and it will just jet across the tank. And so I'll show you an example of that, but I gotta go over to the other building and I gotta make some lift tubes for this. Will be a little bit of a pain, but we'll figure it out. Hopefully we have all the supplies to do that. Mike's just finishing cleaning it up. We just got to fill it up to the top, or extremely close to the top. So it took about, what, 30 minutes to fill it up?
Probably somewhere around there. It took forever, but it's not like that's the fastest hose in the world.
Yeah.
Especially with it going through all the filters and stuff to take out all the chlorine.
Yeah. And again, the chlorine doesn't matter for this tank. It's just tap water with vinegar, so it's just in there to kill all the bacteria and anything that could transfer over. So I'm going to keep working. I'm going to run over to the other building and cut a lift tube and show you guys what that looks like, and then we'll come back. We'll drain all this out, get it cleaned out, and then put the matin filter in it and the substrate in it, and then we'll show the next step. All right, so we got Cryptic Riffs in the house. He's actually got a, what's this called? A transfer pump?
Water transfer pump.
So it's sucking water in and then spitting it out wherever. I guess that isn't.
It's going to come out the green hose and it'll go down the drain.
Oh, gotcha. So you might just hook it up there or something?
Yeah.
That might be too much. We'll figure it out. Maybe use a brute trash can or something.
Who knows?
We'll get it.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. But it's been soaked long enough, so everything should be dead in there. I just got, these are the lift tubes I was talking about. So these are actually going to go right through that hole, and we're going to put an airline tube down in this back part. Yep, just like that. And this will be the side view. That's the front. And so the airline tube will literally just go into this guy, and then the air will actually force the water up and through. That way all the water's coming through the sponge, which the sponge will then act as a filter. So this is our favorite type of filtration because all the babies will feed on the front of this. They'll graze on it. We use it in all of our breeding tanks here at Flip Aquatics. And so that's what we're using for this one. So step one is definitely sanitize your old tank. Even if it's a new tank, it's always a good practice to sanitize it. Now, we're on to step two, Mike. Mike's actually using the water transfer pump right now. It actually came with an attachment to suck out the bottom. This is actually from Mike's house. He hooked us up with it. It was too big for his water changes. But we got it going into the drain right here, going from the tank. So it'll be no time at all, and we'll move on to step two. Mike just wrapped up shop vac in the tank out. We used the transfer water pump, and so we got it down to the bottom. So now, granted, there's still some vinegar in here. It will evaporate if you let it dry. We'll probably spray it out one more time and just make sure there's none in there, and then go ahead and fill it up with water. But on to step number two, which, sorry for the mess, we're in construction mode. Step number two is choosing the right soil. So for Neocaridina shrimp, you want to make sure to choose an inert substrate. So inert means that it will not buffer the pH. So anything like fluorite from Seachem, anything from Eco Complete, you know, your normal pool filter sand. Most of the gravels at the pet store, most of them are inert. They will not influence the pH, and that's the most important thing. So for this, we're using fluorite dark. It's because we have some laying around, and we also want to be able to plant some plants in it, grow some plants, do what we need to do. And black is a really good color for Neocaridina because it really brings it out. Like all the reds, the only one that's going to blend into this, the blues will blend into it, the fantasy blues. Probably the blacks will blend into this pretty much, and then the carbons. But other than that, everything else will show really good. The reds will show up really good on here. This is actually the best substrate for cherry shrimp because it really brings out their color. So inert substrate, very important. Make sure to choose one for your Neocaridina shrimp. Take two.
Oh, there it is.
We got it. So we're literally just gonna spray the sides down, make sure we got all the vinegar out, and then we'll get down to the bottom. We'll use the shop vac, suction all the water out, and then we're good to go from there. From there, we'll get the tank set up. We'll show you that whole process. And this baby's gonna be ready to go. We're actually gonna add some livestock to it tonight. We're not gonna add shrimp to it, and we'll go through the whole process of how we add stuff, everything like that. So this is gonna be fun. Just finished getting the tank clean. We sprayed it out again, as you just saw. We shop vac the water out. So Mike's actually putting in the matin filter. This is a customized matin filter. We do not sell these. We do sell the 40-gallon and lower sizes. This thing's actually a beast. They're tough to get in there, aren't they?
Yeah, they're real tight.
Yeah, and that's how you want them, because then the shrimp won't go through the side. But Mike's getting in there. And then next thing, we're gonna have to get the lift tubes. Is it too long?
Huh? No.
Because I can always cut it down.
I say the other ones that we have stick up a little bit.
Let's cut it down, dude.
You want to cut it down?
Yeah. All right, so we just got the foam cut, so we got it nice and pretty much flush with the trim, so not bad. And then this is what we're doing with the lift tubes. Literally just push that into the back. We'll go down in there. Usually it goes right down.
I don't know if you can see up in there, but see the hose.
Let me see. Oh yeah. So you don't have to get it all the way to the bottom. You can get it like halfway and it'll work. Usually if the air isn't strong enough, it won't work if it's all the way at the bottom. So you put it to like midway and then it'll start working. And so this will literally just poke through, and then we'll have our mat filter set up, and then we'll get the soil in there, and then we'll be good to go. So Mike, pretty easy to install?
Oh yeah.
You got any of these in your tanks at home?
No.
No?
I don't.
Come on, man.
I'm waiting for to set up a shrimp tank at home, you know, and do a mat filter in there.
There you go.
I use sponges and stuff like that.
It's the same difference. What, babe?
We'll have to edit that out.
I gotta walk the dogs out real quick. We'll be right back, guys. All right, so again, we're using the fluorite black. One, because we want to use plants. Two, look at that. It looks good. Mm-hmm. Because it's an inert substrate. Mike was cutting open the bags, thus the hole in the middle. But that's okay. We've all done it. I've done it more times than one. And then we're literally just gonna fill up the whole bottom with substrate. Try to make it as deep as possible. For a tank of this size, and if you're just doing Neocaridina, really you only need enough soil to fill the bottom of the tank. That's what we do in Caridina. We only put in like maybe a ½ inch. But for this purpose, we're gonna try to get it as tall or as thick as we can, because we want to plant some plants down into it. And so maybe in this setup, we'll try to get like 1 inch. But I mean, feel free to do as much as you want. You don't need any more than 1 inch, unless you're using it for like heavily root feeding plants like swords and crypts and things like that. But we're gonna get to it. We're gonna put all 4 bags in, and then we'll check back once that's done. So while Mike's filling up the substrate, I want to give him a huge shout out. He's actually staying over tonight just to help with this tank, which is a huge shout out. So if you guys don't know this, Mike actually has his own YouTube channel. It's Cryptic Riffs. I'll put the link down below. I'll actually put it up top right now. So guys,
1 video a week, guys. 1 video a week is what I put out right now.
1 video. And with Mike's channel, you actually get to see a lot of behind the scenes here at Flip Aquatics. And so definitely a good person to follow if you enjoy our journey. And so definitely go over there, hit the subscribe button, watch some of his recent videos, and let me know what you guys think down below in the comments.
Dude, don't make me
No.
clown. Don't tell him I mixed it up, dude.
No, it's both of us. All right, so we made a little bit of a mistake. We thought fluorite black, we thought these were all fluorite black, but apparently fluorite dark and fluorite black are completely different. So this one's more brown and this one's extremely black. So this stuff looks awesome. This stuff, what do you think?
It looks like potting soil.
It looks okay? Yeah, it looks dirty too. We might have to rinse it. So that's another good thing with soil or stones or whatever. As long as it's not a buffering soil-based substrate, you should rinse it almost every single time. So we didn't rinse it for this one because this stuff came in super, super clean. But we might rinse that stuff. Or we got a bag of Eco Complete over in the other building. We might go snag that because it looks pretty much the same.
Yeah.
You want to do that?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, let's run over to the other building. All right, so we just walked across the street or across the parking lot. Luckily, we had 1 box left of Eco Complete, which I think is it should be pretty close to the same exact color. This stuff is nice. It actually comes with live bacteria in it, so there's actually still water in the bag, which I think is pretty cool that they do that. So this is by Carib C, I think it is.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we use this in a lot of our tanks. We use it in all the 125 gallons across the parking lot, and so it's a great substrate. And so we're actually going to use it in here, and we'll probably just use both bags to get some more depth in the soil or the substrate layer. And so so we'll get this in there, and then we'll move on to step 3, which is actually getting the water ready. So this is how we fill up our buckets with RO water. We actually have this right here, goes into our bucket, and we actually have it hooked up to one of our tubs, and we actually store RO water in here for situations just like this one. If you guys don't know what RO water is, it's reverse osmosis deionization, and so that's what we got in there. So Mike, you about ready for it to turn off?
We got a second.
Okay. The other option from RO water is you could use distilled water you get at the store for like $1 a jug, sometimes less. So basically $1 a gallon. Anticipate that, and we'll show you how we remineralize this and make this perfect for Neocaridina. So this is probably the most important step you can ever do with shrimp keeping: water. Water quality is so important, especially with setting up a new tank, especially with being successful. The most important tool is the one that Mike is holding right now. This is called a TDS pen. It's actually TDS Easy from HM. You can get it on Amazon for like 20 bucks. It's an amazing tool. And so what does this show us? So if we actually measure the TDS of RO water, what would it be? So this one's actually reading 26, which is pretty high, and the reason being is at one point in time we had remineralized water in here, so it's just the extra remineralized water. Distilled water and RO water should be a TDS of less than 10, so the extra 16 we're not going to worry about in this application because we know that it's still safe. It's not chlorine, chloramine, stuff like that. So the next step is we actually have to remineralize this water. We have to add minerals back in, and we're actually going to use what is called Shrimp Mineral GH and KH Plus. This is by Salty Shrimp. Another great product. Oh, Mike! Dude, that is hilarious. Oh
man,
it was a total save, and then it was a total fail. I love it. But anyway, we're actually remineralizing with that one because it's already in there. Dude, that is so funny. Oh, you got your sleeve wet.
Oh man. Anyways, so this one's by Brightwell.
Let me see it. So this one is actually by Brightwell. Because it's in liquid form, it would take so much of this to actually remineralize a tank of this size. So for that reason, we're actually going to use the powdered stuff. And this is what we use in our building just because, look, we remineralize so much water, so liquid just does not make sense for us. Once Brightwell comes out with the salt, it's going to be amazing. We're going to love it. But for now, we're using this stuff. So the big thing with this is your TDS meter will tell you the TDS of your water. So in this case, it's 26. With mixing this in, we want to get to a TDS of about 200. Now at 200, we know it is going to be perfect for any shrimp in this room. All Neocaridina shrimp, remineralized with Salty Shrimp, Shrimp Mineral GH and KH Plus at a TDS of 200 are going to do well almost every single time. So we're going to add this salt in. I don't know exactly how much it's going to take because I haven't remineralized in this small of a scale in a long time, but we're going to literally just add a little bit at a time. I'd always rather be less TDS than more because you can always add it in, you can't take it out. And so we're going to try to get it to like 180 and then slowly add it in from there, and then put it into the 125 gallons. So that's what we're gonna do now. So this brew trash can is, let's see, I think it doesn't say. I think this is a 35 gallon brew trash can. Does that sound right?
It's either, I wanna say it's 32 gallons.
Okay, so 32 gallons. So we'll say that we have it filled up to roughly 25 gallons, maybe a little bit more. And so we're gonna add 1 teaspoon in. 1 teaspoon. And then, with that, we're going to try to make it as level as possible so we get an accurate thing of how many teaspoons it would take to remineralize this much water. Roughly somewhere between 25 and 30 gallons here. That's perfect, Mike. And then we'll just sprinkle it all the way around the surface. Now, the big thing with this is you got to let it dissolve. So Mike actually has a stir stick. These are actually coral pointer sticks. I think we got it from like, I don't know, one of those reefer websites. So we'll get in there, we'll stir it around, we'll let it sit for a while, and then we'll check back in like 10 minutes to see what the TDS is, and then go back from there and add some more in or do what we got to do to make the TDS right. So while the little acrylic sticks are pretty good for like a 5-gallon bucket, as Mike said, we're going to use the big guy. We're actually going to use think this is 1.5 inch PVC and mix it with this. That way we make sure it's nice and stirred up. I feel like I'm making a pot of soup right now. So I'm gonna keep stirring it and then we'll check back and see what the TDS is. Alright, so we got my man Mike. He's gonna measure it real quick. Cryptic riffs. So that only brought it up to 57. So we only jumped up about 31 TDS. So we have to jump up another 140. So we'd have to add in 5 more teaspoons. So we'll add in 5 more teaspoons. And hopefully that puts us right in the money. And this is all it is. So this is really not hard. So if you got a home aquarium, you could literally mix this in a 1 gallon jug and then just use the 1 gallon jug for water changes. You could use it for setting up your tank. You don't need a huge contraption like this. This is only because we're setting up literally 125 gallon tanks. So we're gonna need a lot of water, a lot of salt. You guys will be doing this on a much smaller scale, but this is a very important step. Of course, TDS is good, or tap water is good if your GH is right, if your KH is right, but this takes the guesswork out of it. You literally get distilled water or RO water or RODI water, and you just remineralize it, and you know that your water is going to be perfect every single time.
What is this, take 4?
Yeah, this is take 4. It's taken us a while to get to this point.
We're at 228.
Okay, so we shot up a little high, which I always say, don't go overboard, but it is what it is. So anywhere between 180 to 220 is good. So obviously this is a little high. So what we'll do is on the next batch of water, because we're gonna have to make 4 of these batches of water. On the next batch, we'll actually do it like 180. That way it all equals out, and then we'll put it into the tank. And since we have access to RO water here, if we get to the tank and the tank's a little bit too high, we can just add RO water to it to neutralize it, bring it back down to 200. Because our goal is to get this tank at 200, and by the end of this video, you will see this tank running at roughly 200 TDS. So we're gonna use the transfer pump and actually get the water in there, and then I guess we'll check back when this is all done, because it might take a little while.
Whatever it takes, man.
Whatever it takes. So we're actually filling it up behind the mat filter. That way it doesn't disturb the substrate. So another nice thing about having a mat filter, you can see it's slowly filling up right now. Like I said, we're probably gonna have to do 4 of these buckets, because 4 of these would be roughly 120 gallons, and then we'll have 5 gallons to go from there. But hopefully with the soil in there and the mat filter at deep places, probably about 5 gallons. So we'll see how much it takes, and we'll let you know when it's all done. Well, after lots of mixing and a lot of time, we finally got the tank where it needs to be, I hope. So we'll test it again. We've let it settle, and we want to see where it's at.
Sitting at 215, 214.
Okay.
It's dropping a little bit. Right around 215, 214.
So again, this is a little on the higher side. Not a big deal. We can always add RO water to it, do a little water change with a little bit less next time. But anywhere between 220 to 180, you're going to be in the safe zone. Granted, you could probably go up to 250 and still be okay. But for setting up a new tank, I prefer 180 to 220. So we're good. Now we're on to the next step now that we got this set up. Just a little recap. TDS easy. You can get it on Amazon. I'll put the link down in the description. Salty Shrimp GH and KH Plus, you can get it on our website, flipaquatics.com. Neo Tiger GH and KH Plus. Granted, this is one of our sponsors, just so you guys know. This is Brightwell, one of our sponsors of our channel. Really, really awesome people over at Brightwell. Really appreciate their support. And you can get this on our website as well. And so, we set this up with the GH and KH Plus from Salty Shrimp B Shrimp. And this is what we got. So, we're going to move on to the next step, step 4. Alright, so we're in our fish room slash snail room slash plant room, and Mike's actually going to pick out some snails for us. So step number 4 is actually adding something live to the tank. So we want to get that bacteria growing, and we do that by putting live stuff in the tank and some plants and things like that. For now, we're just going to add some snails. Probably when we get our plant order in tomorrow, Mike's going to add some plants to it. I won't be there for that. I'm actually going out of town. But Mike, what are you thinking for snails? What are your favorite mystery snails?
I got to go with either... it's hard for me to pick because I like the golds, and I like the blacks, and I like the albinos.
Ooh, so these are the golds. We got the blacks down here, and then the albinos. Where are those ones at?
Albinos up here.
Oh yeah, I do like those. And I like the ivories too, man. They're all good choices.
Cool.
And we don't have any blues in stock, do we?
No, we do.
Do we?
Yeah, we got a whole tank.
Ooh.
We can do a toss-up of each.
You want to?
Yeah, dude, I think that'd be cool.
Okay, so what are you thinking? 1, 2 of each?
We'll do like 2 of each.
2 of each, alright. So we're going to go through, we'll pick out 2 blues, 2 albinos, 2 golds, 2 blacks, and 2 ivories. And these guys are very, very hardy. They produce a lot of waste. So, for example, the Eco Complete came with live bacteria in it. And so these snails are going to ensure that that live bacteria stays alive. And this is how we really get our cycle going on our tanks. We add snails to the tank. And these snails will not harm shrimp. So they're a good thing to leave in your tank. Now, granted, 125-gallon tank, we're going to add a lot more snails than we otherwise would if it was a smaller tank. So if you're doing a 10-gallon tank, I'd probably do 1 snail. If you're doing a 20-gallon tank, I'd probably do 2 or 3, and so on and so forth. You could do up to 2 in a 10-gallon tank if you really want to. And then mix and match. Mystery snails are a lot of fun. They lay their eggs outside of the water. I don't think we have any egg clutches in here, so they're really easy to control the population. If you want to hatch some, you could hatch some. Mike's having a good old time.
I'm all
and
over
so
the place tonight, guys.
yeah, it's late. It's late. We're here late. And so that's what we're working on. So we're going to get some snails in the tank. And I think step number 4 is always add some snails to your tank to get that live bacteria going.
And try not to destroy your fish room on the process. Like, don't throw stuff around like me. Toss bottles and trash cans full of water. We got our 2 ivory snails. Or these are the albinos, I'm sorry. The albinos. These whitish looking ones are the ivories. You got your golds, you got blacks, and you got blues.
Nice. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them going on the 125, which for 125, that's more than enough. You could actually add more if you want. So we're going to put them right in. All of our water parameters are the same. So we're not going to drip acclimate them. We're just going to throw them right in. If you do it at home, I would recommend temperature acclimating snails. You don't have to drip acclimate them. Just temperature acclimate them because you don't want to shock them. And it's normal for them to stay in their shell for a day, but anything longer than a day. Actually, I'll show you the trick that we use. So we'll go out here and I'll show you the trick that we use once you get snails in the mail. Just as a little side tip. Nothing crazy. So all we do is we'll add them into the tank. We'll put them all in the front right or the front left corner. And then by tomorrow morning, they should all have moved. They're nocturnal, so they prefer being out in dark. And so by the next morning, they should have all moved from that corner spot. In this case, they're all going to start moving right away. But that's good principle just to go by if you ever get snails in the mail. And then I'm thinking we're going to add some water sprite in here, some other plants. And then probably in a week, we'll start adding babies to it. Which there's another step that's a very important step that we're going to get to here in a second. But definitely adding some snails to your tank, I think it's vital for having success in your shrimp tank. So one of the main reasons why I'm a huge advocate of snails is the big thing about shrimp is they do not produce a lot of waste. So in a 125 gallon, you're going to need a lot of shrimp to produce enough waste to keep live bacteria alive. And so what happens is you spend all this time going through what's called a cycle where you're building up bacteria to eat ammonia, and then you're building up bacteria to eat nitrite, and then at the end of the day it turns to nitrate. So if you guys don't know that cycle, go through and Google fish cycle. You can learn all about it. It's pretty simple. Once you get the concept of it, it's easy. So people will set up a shrimp tank like a 125 gallon, put some fish in there for a while, add some bacteria to it, let it go, maybe put in a seeded filter, which is like a filter you've used on another tank. And after a while, the tank's ready to go. You add shrimp to it. You don't put enough shrimp in there. The cycle does not live because there's not enough ammonia being produced, not enough nitrate. And then all of a sudden you have what's called a recycle, where your tank starts recycling itself. And at that point, your shrimp will die. We highly recommend using snails as a thing to produce ammonia, to eat leftover food, to provide natural just animals in your tank to keep that cycle alive. So snails for us are so vital when setting up a home aquarium for shrimp. So step number 5, it's one thing we didn't plan on doing tonight, but I figured we have all these extra sword plants back here, is I think natural plants or live plants for an aquarium is very important. It just creates a nice ecosystem. These leaves are eventually going to die and break down. The shrimps will eat those, which we'll talk about that in the future, about adding Indian almond leaves and things like that. We can actually talk about that in the next step. But I think live plants are very, very important to keeping a shrimp tank just natural. These are going to convert nitrates, basically into leaves, and they're going to remove a lot of the toxins out of the water. So these are a great thing to have in your tank. So we're just going to throw some live stuff in there just to make the tank more of a natural ecosystem. And so these are just some random swords that we had left over from one of the trade shows. They've just been floating in this 40 gallon for a long time. And so we're just gonna toss them in there, see what happens, see if they make it. And we'll run that Fluval 2.0 in there and just see what happens. So we're gonna keep digging them out and then we're gonna plant them. So step 5, add some plants to your tank. Step 5 was adding the plants to the tank. Now step 6, we're actually gonna add some natural decor. There's 3 things I think are important for any shrimp tank to ensure that the shrimp get everything that they need. One of which is Malaysian driftwood. Now granted, we have Pacific driftwood, we have Mopani driftwood, we have spider driftwood. Malaysian's always my favorite because look at it, it sinks right away. And so we actually have these we pulled out of a tank, I don't know, a month ago or so. And so we're adding them into this tank. So these are gonna grow what's called biofilm. The sap actually leaches out of the wood and creates like a moldy substance. So it's really good for the shrimp. So we're gonna add a few of those in there just to give the shrimp some places to hide after they molt. They need places to go. And so we're doing that. Now, I gotta give a shout out to my man over at Tzawa Tanks, Zenzo. He sent me these leaves. These are magnolia leaves. Now, I've never used these before, but he assured me that they work really good. So we're gonna test them on this tank. We're actually probably just gonna use this whole bag. Maybe not this whole bag. We'll probably use like 4 or 5 of them. These are my babies though. These are what are called Indian almond leaves or katapa leaves. We sell them on our website. You can get them on eBay or places like that. If you order in bulk, obviously they're cheaper, but we sell them on our website. I think they're a 10 pack or a 40 pack, and we're gonna use probably 3 or 4 of these today as well. Now what these leaves are gonna do, they're gonna slowly break down the water, releasing something that's called tannins. Now what tannins are, is it's basically natural antioxidants that release in the water. It adds minerals to the water. It decreases the pH of the water, which we really don't want in this situation, but with the amount of KH that we've added to that water, so KH is the second component of this. So for every 2 GH you add 1 KH. KH is what stabilizes the pH, which we need above 7, which we won't get into all that stuff today. We're just going based off of if you use this and use a TDS pen. But anyway, getting back to the topic, these are gonna eventually break down in the water, which microorganisms will break these down, and the shrimp will actually eat the microorganisms. So they're amazing for shrimp tanks. Now, the one thing to know is you never have to take these out of the aquarium. Now, if you don't prefer the look of them breaking down, you can remove them, but they do create, they create a natural food source, which is good for the shrimp because shrimp in nature are scavengers. They're natural grazers. The other great thing about leaves and driftwood is the amount of hiding places that they create. And so that's why I use them. That's why I like them. Now, there is one other thing that I recommend that we're not adding to this tank, which we kind of are because of the live plants, but a type of moss. Moss creates tons of nooks and crannies. The shrimp can hide in it and make them feel comfortable. And so moss is another good thing too that we're unfortunately not adding just because we don't have a ton of it. And in this tank, we're going to add some other plants that the moss would get tangled up in. So we don't really need it for this scape. But if you're doing a tank at your house, I would recommend using some type of moss. Now, Mike is doing an awesome job just scaping it, having fun with it. And so at the end of the day, this tank's going to look really good. And we're gonna add these in afterwards. And so yeah, the tank's coming along great. So Mike's got his scape down. You can see the snails are starting to cruise around. The rest of them are just starting to come out of their house. We got one cruising down that way. He's got the driftwood figured out. And now it's just planting these swords. What did you say these were? You thought they were what?
I think the red flame swords.
Red flame
but
swords?
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. So we're gonna plant these up. And then we're going to do our last and final step that I think is very important to ensuring that you have success. So another quick note, all leaves that you get, they're going to float. They're usually going to float for about, I don't know, up to a week. One thing you could do to speed up the process is boil them. But when you boil them, you take some of the tannins out. So what we do, just rinse them real good. You can even dip them in vinegar water if you want and then rinse them off after that. That way no bacteria is getting in your tank. Just be careful who you're getting your leaves from because they could have pesticides on the leaf, which would be detrimental to your shrimp tank. So always get them from a trusted source. Obviously, I trust Zenzo, so I put these in here just with a quick rinse off. And I'll just let them float for a couple days and then they'll sink. So these snails will actually eat the leaves and actually digest them quicker. The shrimp will actually eat their poop from the leaves. So it's just a good symbiotic relationship. I always love snails in tanks. So this is what we got up to this point. Now is the most important step. I believe it's step 7, and that is adding live bacteria to your tank. We add it once with the snails, and then we add it again when we put the shrimp in. So we'll show you what we use and how we dose it, and we'll get into that right now. All right, so this is what we use here at Flip Aquatics. Now, granted, Fritz is who produces Fritz Aquatics. They are a sponsor of the channel, so just in full transparency, they are a sponsor. But this is by far the best bacteria you can use for Neocaridina. It needs to be refrigerated, so something really important. And again, we do sell it on the website. Pretty much anything in the video you can find on the website. But this is what we're dosing today. This is a 1 ounce. This is good for 50 gallons. Since we only added snails in here, we're just going to dose with the 1 ounce. And then when we add the shrimp in here, we'll dose with this again. And then anytime that you get shrimp in, you can always dose with this just to make sure the bioload is good. So Mike, we're actually going to add it behind the filter. That way it takes right to the sponge. Now this stuff stinks. And it stinks because it's live bacteria. So just know that going into it, and it's literally just going to seep right into the sponge. And so it'll just make its way all the way down, and then that's good to cycle this tank. Again, when we add shrimp into it in the next week, we're going to add this again. But this is what a Neocaridina tank should look like. If you follow all these steps just like we did, and you buy shrimp from us, because this is how we keep shrimp, I guarantee that you're going to have success. If you do not have success, I will replace your shrimp every single time, I promise. And so this is how we do it. If you follow these steps to perfection, you will do good. Another thing that I guess, Mike, I didn't even talk about this, temperature. Temperature of your tank is another important thing. We keep our tanks at room temperature, anywhere between 68 to 72. I always say don't use a heater. Heaters can malfunction. That's a whole different story. But as far as everything else goes, this is what a Neocaridina tank should look like. So there you have it, 7 steps to a successful Neocaridina tank. I gotta give a huge shout out to my main man Mike, Cryptic Riffs, for sticking it out this whole time. He worked over to help me out. And so guys, do me a favor, go check out his channel, Cryptic Riffs. You can find the link down below. Go give him a thumbs up. I'll try to put his channel right here, and you guys can go find that. So Mike, you got anything to say, man? Did you have a good time?
I had a great time, man. You know, anybody that goes to my channel, checks it out, if you hit that subscribe button, thank you so much. I appreciate all the love. And any of my subscribers that watch this video, you guys are awesome. Keep it up.
That's awesome, Mike. Well, thank you so much again for being here, man. Really appreciate you. Mike is a valued asset here at Flip Aquatics, and so super appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we're going to be doing more beginner shrimp tutorials like this one coming soon. Hopefully, I'll have Mike there to help me. So we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for all the support. We love you guys, and as always, God bless.